Hello, and welcome to Formation, a weekly conversation for followers of Jesus. My name is Shannon Moore.
You're a follower of Jesus.
I am a follower of Jesus.
Me too.
Yay.
My name's Renee Hoke.
And if you listen to or watch this series, you know that we are missing a person.
Kara's in class all day long for 5 days in a row.
So, but I think it's our last class, so...
Isn't that exciting?
Very exciting. But we do miss Kara. We were talking at lunchtime that since Advent, Kara has been the constant. You and I have both been out a couple of
Our
times.
substitute became the cornerstone.
Became the cornerstone. That's exactly right. And so, but we wish Kara good luck on her class.
We do. And congratulations on a finish line coming up. Good for her.
Absolutely.
We'll ask her about that when she's back.
Well, Renee, what do you think about this new series that we find ourselves in?
I'm really excited about it. I don't know of another time in the churches that I've served that a worship series was devoted to women in the Bible. So I'm all for that.
I'm so glad that we're doing this. We kicked off this new series. It's called Fierce in our worship services. And so we thought here in Formation, this would be a good opportunity for us to dig a little deeper into the texts that we're hearing about in worship and see where it takes us. And I'm very excited about the woman we're discussing today, whose name is Rahab. We find Rahab in Joshua, which...
this is a great story.
Joshua is one of my favorite
It's an adventure.
stories. It's so exciting.
Book. Yep.
So just to give a little background, at the end of...
You're not going to sing for us first? The Rahab song that you were going to... You told me that you were going to sing an aria.
Well, here's the thing. So I was a voice major in college, and for my senior recital, I did sing a song, an aria from the oratorio Joshua. And it's about the leveling, the walls coming down in Jericho, but the little recitative that comes before the aria mentions Rahab. And so I've been humming that little recitative.
But you're not going to sing it for our Formation friends?
I don't think that would be very good.
Okay.
But
I just was impressed that you knew a piece of classical music that mentions Rahab.
That mentions Rahab, yes. So look
that
it up.
makes her a fierce woman.
Yep, that's another fiercity of Rahab. So just to give a little background, Moses had led the people, the Israelites, out of Egypt through a 40-year period of wandering in the desert. We find out later in Joshua that one of the reasons it took so long in God's plan was that it was for all of the men of military age when they left Egypt to die out.
The passing of a generation.
The passing of a whole generation.
So the people who were not faithful
didn't get
to cross over into the promised land.
Even Moses had a moment
who
of
worked
disobedience.
Really, yes, I think when I get to heaven, I want to talk to somebody about what happened to Moses.
Poor Moses. So he got to see it from afar, but he didn't get to cross over into it. And so Joshua becomes the leader of the Israelites as they prepare.
Moses' right-hand man.
Right. So will you, just to give us a little background, will you start us off in Joshua chapter 1, read the first few verses?
I will. After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' aide, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you and all these people get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land I am about to give to them, to the Israelites. I will give you every place where you set your foot, as I promised Moses.
Okay. So that's right out of the gate.
God delivering on his promise.
Right. And so there's a lot of preparation to do, and they have to tell who, the women can stay here while the men go here. But it's really when we get to chapter 2 that the excitement begins. And so I'm going to start us off here, and I'm going to just volley back to you a couple of times here before we discuss it. And this is chapter 2. It says, Joshua, son of Nun, sent 2 men secretly from Shittim as spies, saying, "Go view the land, especially Jericho." So they went and entered the house of a prostitute whose name was Rahab, and spent the night there.
Why did they go there first?
That's a good question. So I was
Were on assignment and they went to a prostitute's house.
I was looking at a commentary, and it said the text never explicitly says that they used or took part of the services there, but it's deeply implied that the ambiguity of the phrasing of the text strongly implies that that's what was going on. What do you think?
Well, I just think it's worth noting.
Well, if that's the first place you go,
Yes.
maybe so.
Maybe there was kind of like a diner there and they went for a bowl of soup.
I bet that's what it was. So it says that the king of Jericho was told, "Some Israelites have come here today or tonight to search out the land." So the king sends orders to Rahab. I guess the king just assumed that maybe visitors would be at Rahab's. "Bring out the men who have come to you, who entered your house, for they have come only to search out the whole land." But the woman took the 2 men and hid them. Why don't you start there, middle of verse 4.
She said, "Yes, the men came to me, but I did not know where they had come from. At dusk, when it was time to close the city gate, the men left. I don't know which way they went. Go after them quickly, you may catch up with them." But she had taken them up to the roof and hidden them under the stalks of flax she had laid out on the roof. So the men set out in pursuit of the spies on the road that leads to the fords of the Jordan. And as soon as the pursuers had gone out, the gate was shut.
Let's stop there. So, talking about a fierce woman, cool as a cucumber.
Yep.
What do you make of this?
She's just thinking fast and clearly not aligned with the king of Jericho, not trusting the king at all. So she seems to be somebody who can think on her feet.
Right. And think ahead.
Yes.
I think this is a very...
And send them off on a wild goose chase.
Right.
To protect her visitors.
And as we'll find out shortly, there's a method. She has thought ahead. There's a strategy here for the safety of her family. It says in verse 8, before they went to sleep, she came up to them on the roof and said to them, will you read her words?
"I know that the Lord has given this land to you, and that a great fear of you has fallen on us, so that all who live in this country are melting in fear because of you. We have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea for you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to Sihon and Og, the 2 kings of the Amorites, east of the Jordan, whom you completely destroyed. When we heard of it, our hearts melted, and everyone's courage failed because of you. For the Lord your God is God in heaven above and earth below. Now then, please swear to me by the Lord that you will show kindness to my family, because I have shown kindness to you. Give me a sure sign that you will spare the lives of my father and mother, my brothers and sisters, and all who belong to them, and that you will save us from death. Our lives for your lives." I went too far.
Yeah, that's okay. So she had heard, she was very, very aware, everybody was aware of what was going on in the neighboring.
And there was great fear for Joshua and the army that was coming. I mean, everyone was convinced this is where the power was, because this is where God's power was.
And in my translation, which is a little different from yours, it says, when we heard about it, there was no courage left in any of us. But then she starts talking about God. She gives a faith statement.
She does.
That the God, your God,
Lord your God is God in heaven above
and on earth.
So that is a proclamation of not claiming God as a relationship with her, but understanding the one true God.
Right. And so possibly wanting to be a part of this faith, but definitely recognizing that of all the other gods that people worship, yours Joshua, this God of the Israelites is the God. And I think that's important for us to note.
So that makes her a faithful woman, right?
I think so.
To make that statement, she's a woman of faith.
And then she says, "So here you go." we know how this is going to play out. So I have helped you out. Will you help me out? And it says in verse 14, they said to her, "Our life for yours." Yep. If you don't tell this business of ours, then we'll deal kindly with you. So she let him down by a rope through the window because her house was on the outside of the city wall. And will you read her words in verse 16?
I will. Now she said to them, "Go to the hills so the pursuers will not find you. Hide yourselves there 3 days until they return, and then go on your way."
So she's
very strategic in her thinking. And they're following her instructions
and they're
to the letter.
trusting her.
Yes.
They
almost like she's been in some military campaigns in the past, don't you think?
A little bit.
She has that sense about her.
Yeah, and it's
Here's where you go to hide.
Very no
Stay
nonsense.
there 3 days.
We're going to do this. They're going to go here. She sent them in one direction. I'm sending you on this. It's going to take this long. I just love how
I wonder
she's got
if
it all
she
figured
was
out.
fearful at all about the king of Jericho finding out that she had betrayed him. I wonder if she worried at all that there would be some retaliation.
You know, that's a good question. Of course, there's no way for us to know, but I would guess, based on how she has presented herself in this text, that no, because she knows his days are numbered, that she's so sure that the Israelites are going to be successful because God is on their side.
Right.
That she's not worried about that. She's putting all her eggs.
She seems very courageous,
in that
very smart, very strategic in her thinking. This is a very impressive woman.
This is a fierce woman. In verse 17, they say to her, "We're swearing this oath to you, but you got to tie this red ribbon or this cord in the window so that we remember which window it is. And we're going to take care of everybody who's in that house. So your father, your mother, your brothers, your family, but it has to be people in this house. And we're not going to touch anybody inside your house. If any of these folks step out into the street, they're responsible for their own death and will be innocent of it."
And if she discloses anything about this arrangement, then
the deal is off.
The deal is off.
Right. And so they left. She tied the cord in the window immediately. And in verse 22, it says they departed and went to the hill country down, is that mid-Texas?
Mm-hmm. Just north of San Antonio.
North of San Antonio. And stayed there 3 days until the pursuers returned, just like she said. And so, yeah, everything.
Is that the end of her in Joshua?
Well,
don't we hear about her once the city falls? Where is it? Well, first they got to get across the Jordan. That takes a while.
Yeah.
The fall of Jericho. I thought we saw her in a scene. You know what? I know that she's in a classic painting about the walls of Jericho. I wonder if I'm getting that confused. No, there she is. In verse 23 of chapter 6.
Oh, yeah. So the young men who had been spies went in and brought Rahab out with her father, mother, brothers, and all who belonged to her. They burned the city and everything in it, but Rahab, the prostitute, with her family and all who belonged to her, Joshua spared. Her family has lived in Israel ever since.
I would say there's a happy ending, except for the whole destroying everybody else in town.
Yeah. So here's something that we need to talk about. You and I talked about Rahab a year or so ago when we were doing all-church Sunday school.
When we were doing Peculiar Treasures, the Frederick Buechner book?
It may have been that. I think it must have been.
Yes, I think it was.
And so we had a debate about Rahab's relationship.
We were trying to look at her genealogy.
Because in the New Testament genealogy, one of them, it lists Rahab as a descendant of Jesus, as along the lines of Ruth, who we'll be talking about next week. And so we had a pretty heated discussion about that, and you sat down and like did the math and figured out that really it would be quite difficult for this Rahab, the prostitute, to.
But I can't remember what I based that on. Did it seem
just the
convincing at the time?
It really did. You went and researched timelines and what time period this happened versus what time period Ruth was, and it was very impressive. I bet you've still got it somewhere.
I wonder where but I think I was looking at commentaries and that someone else suggested, well, there must have been more than one Rahab, but Rahab is included in the genealogy. I would want it to be her.
Yeah.
Her fierce strategic brilliance, and she was a woman of faith who was very, very critical. Look how God used her.
Oh,
look! Minus Rahab, we can't imagine how the story would have turned out.
So, is there? I don't know if I would call it a moral dilemma, but is it problematic that it's all built on a lie? I mean, and on deception, and because it was a lie that she told the king of Jericho.
Well, I think that Joshua was there as a spy. Mm-hmm. So Joshua and his guys were there spying. There was jealousy, political intrigue. I think it's just a typical,
just the way
adventure of the Hebrew Scriptures.
And we do find
it's about surviving.
Yeah, and Rahab's importance lives well into the New Testament. We find both in Hebrews and in James reference to her faithfulness, and James in particular talks about, it's not a long commentary, it's just a verse, but something along the lines of, it was her works that she showed her faithfulness through her,
not too many heroes from the Old Testament get a shout out in the New Testament. That puts you in rare company.
Yeah.
That you get mentioned again, and the story is so good. Now, I guess if we read this in a children's Bible story book, we wouldn't mention her employment status, or I wonder, because
I don't remember hearing this. I remember
we'll have to do some research.
As a child, I remember the story of Jericho, of course, and the walls coming down and all that. But I
almost think I remember pictures of Joshua's spies coming down
and the Crimson Cord. I do remember that. I remember drawing pictures.
So
seeing pictures of that, but I can't imagine we would have talked about.
Probably not.
Yeah.
She was an innkeeper.
Well, whatever she was fierce.
She was.
And played a huge role in the Israelites' fortune. So, well, that's
the only one spared in all of Jericho when Jericho fell.
Due to her intelligence, her foresight, and her quick thinking.
And her faithfulness. I do think we want to really acknowledge that proclamation of faith that she makes.
Absolutely. Well.
All right. I'm disappointed that you're not singing that Rahab song, but people can.
Austin, should I sing it? Austin already said that the microphone is designed for speaking and not for singing.
Spoken word.
Austin, our producer, fantastique. So
he tries to keep us from embarrassing ourselves.
And is not always successful, but he does try. We thank you for your work, Austin. All right. Well, that's about our time for this week's episode. Next week, we're talking about
Ruth.
All right.
Love her too.
Another fierce woman. And looking forward to where this series takes us, not only in worship, but here in formation. Hope that you are enjoying this series and these discussions about fierce women of the Bible. If you have any questions or comments for us, please let us hear from you. Our email is formation@uccftw.com. We would love to hear from you.
Glad to have you with us.
We'll see you next time. Bye.